see there's someone just said you've missed a couple of CRAMs. It's totally okay. We did miss you though, but you got the CRAMs there for you, so that should work. All right, you got those flashcards? Look at that. I'm super excited. I love checking it out and seeing you guys kind of play through them. So those flashcards had some words that are going to be super exciting for us for tonight as we kind of look at how to put together our argument skills with our rhetorical analysis so we can, like, you know, bring it in with the score, right? That is so exciting. Okay, so we do have so much that I want to look at tonight. I got a lot for you. It is our AP Lang CRAM session 4. So we've got this Thursday, and then next week we got Thursday, and then after that we're like rolling right around into the test, and we're going to go as a 2-fer. So we'll have 2 the week after. So when you get your follow-up, I'm going to just put those dates in there just to remind you of them so you can make sure that you're there for me and that I'm there for you. So, of course, you are familiar with our weekly stream calendar. If you're not, you should be. But it is all out there for you on Fiveable. You can subscribe, buy the course, and then get your information that way. Of course, you can also follow us at Think Fiveable, and we'll reach out to you, respond to you, get anything you want to. Of course, you know, in just a couple weeks, you guys are all going to get your college credit for AP Lang, and you're going to like at us on Twitter, right? You know you are. It's going to be amazing. All right, test updates. You guys, we've talked about this each time, so I don't feel like I'm going to put a ton of information out here. But we did have some information from College Board that College Board reached out to every student with the email address that you used when you created your College Board account and sent you an email. Some students have found it and clicked that they're confirming that they're going to take it using that email address. And some students are like, they've never gotten that email. So if you haven't done that, log into your College Board account, double check it, make sure you're good, and then make sure that you set that little notification so that you can get the emails from them. Okay. It's going to be amazing. All right. So a couple of questions already came in today. So before I get started with where we're going, I'm going to look at the first question, which was in at like 8:40. Super excited. The question was, do you have a guess as to how many points on the rhetorical analysis we'll need to get the 3, the 4, or the 5? And the honest truth is no. We've not been given that information. We've been told that on the 28th of April, we will have a PowerPoint that goes over some important stuff. So maybe then it'll be great. As soon as we do find out, though, I will let you know. If you go back and you look at the rubric writing samples that were kind of scored with the 1 through 6 and then the 1 through 9, you kind of have those extra pieces there. So, all right. Also, let's see, I had another question about the Fiveable Olympics. You should definitely check those out. They should have sent out some emails. I'll let Amanda know that you guys have some questions. So it'll be super fun for that. Okay? All right. Now, I did send to you guys several different resources that we're going to use throughout the night. So I wanted to just kind of start out with where we're at. So we're looking at how to use the argumentative structure and Toulmin in order to build high-quality rhetorical analysis body paragraphs. But I know we all kind of need a little bit of mental break. We're super excited. We want to really nail it on this test. We have so many questions about printing out the prompt and responding and doing it handwritten, taking the picture, and what if my computer runs out? And I totally get all of those things. So we want to make sure that we kind of get through all of this. But some of the resources that we're going to give you here from Fiveable, we want you to be able to use them so often that you kind of really start figuring it out. Okay. So you should have picked that Nearpod link in there. If you didn't and you want the code, it is RQVKA. RQVKA. That is our code for today. All right. So we're going to look at using aspects to create a claim and presenting the evidence that supports that argument, because you are, for this, creating your claim about their claim. Okay, so we're going to look at explaining the general outline of argumentation. So there's a little bit of new learning tonight. And then we're going to look at Toulmin argumentation that you can use to write the body paragraphs so that you can address both the concrete and the abstract tasks of the prompt. Okay, so bonus points for looking at a line of reasoning, because I kind of thought about it, and why not just use the line of reasoning as we go along, each time. So that said, we're going to kind of jump on over here. And I know last week we had so many questions. It was a lot of questions. But if you have anything just based on what we looked at with our learning intention. What do you know or what do you want to know for tonight? So looking at classical argumentation structure, looking at Toulmin, building a body paragraph that scores really well. What do you know or what do you want to know? Take just a minute for me. Ooh, look at all of these great questions. What do you put in body paragraphs? How do you get those points? Because we all want those points. And that's like 4 in that area. That's a pretty big deal, right? How to create a more structured argument that has better flow. How to develop a path of logic. Good ways to write about argumentation. Absolutely, because you definitely want to address the author's argument. But then, of course, you have your own argument about that argument. It's so meta. So meta, right? Okay. Intro and conclusion paragraphs. Now, we looked at introduction paragraphs in a much greater deal last week. I do have one that we're going to look at today, but you can definitely go back. If you look at the Fiveable worksheet for line of reasoning, it actually has a template on there for introduction paragraphs too. So we'll kind of look at those. And then we'll look at some introduction paragraphs with other prompts as we go through the weeks. Not going into a rabbit hole summary. I appreciate that reference right there. I do. We're definitely going to look at all of these things. It's going to be great. Okay. So with this, a couple of you guys asked about the timeline, and I actually have that built in today in the slides. So it's amazing. It's going to be great. And so all that said, let's get started. Okay, so our outline for tonight is we're looking at the argument structures, and then from there, we're going to do the classical structure, which is, we've talked about it, and so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. And then we're going to look at the Toulmin structure, and then I have an example there, which I think you'll like. And then we're going to move into the quick recap aspects, the chunks by the message and the purpose. And then we're going to look at that 2019 Gandhi prompt. So I think I have 5 of you who I have not yet gotten feedback to, but don't worry, you will get it tonight or tomorrow. I promise you will. Just 5 of you guys. Everybody else, you should have gotten it. And hopefully you're appreciating it. I've had so many great emails from you all. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. I do love doing it that way because you get to see the feedback, you get to see the comments, you get to see the rubric, and I think it's very helpful. So with that, I had a couple of other questions about what do I do when I freak out? Okay, totally okay. So if we freak out a little bit, we can totally control it by focusing on what we can do and focusing on what we've done. So these are kind of our outlines from where we've been, and we're looking at where we're going now. And the fortunate thing is, since there's only one question, our CRAM is totally going to focus on that one question. So it's going to be great. Okay, excellent. So with that said, we talked last week about the Unit 2 skills and kind of how we could bridge the gap between the reading, because you have to read and understand the prompt, but also the writing, because you have to write and build in the layers on top of what you just read, right? Totally meta. And so we're moving forward through Unit 2 and into Unit 3 so that tonight we're looking at all of these pieces. How do we develop a paragraph that has a claim and evidence? How do we make those body paragraphs have claims and evidence that demonstrate understanding of the audience's beliefs and values and needs? How do we have the thesis? How do we do all of that? Okay, so we're thinking about thinking and we're writing about writing. And so that's what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is so meta. It's like metacognitive because you're thinking about the thinking about the thinking. Okay, we're hitting all of these different layers of thinking. So classical argument structure. Now we've talked about these before. So again, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail here. But in Aristotle's Rhetoric, he tracks and teaches the art of persuasion or the art of effective speaking. And he says, hey, these are the appeals. You guys know those, right? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I almost heard you. Ethos, logos, pathos, right? You're there. So you're not going to use those terms in your writing, but you would say things like creating an appeal to credibility or an appeal to the emotional reaction of a loving mother or whatever it is, right? So you see those appeals in an Aristotelian argument, but we also see the recommended structure that's built on the line of reasoning, okay? So line of reasoning is your introduction. That's going to be your opening and your hook, your background, a little bit of context. Now, someone asked a moment ago, if I know some background information, can I bring outside information in? Yeah, absolutely you can. I'd be hesitant to bring way too much in because if you're someone that loves, for example, you love history, right? And you get this article that just is this perfect moment for you in history, and then you just wrote way more on the context than you did about the essay itself, then that won't go over very well for you. So you can totally do that, but you want to check it and make sure it really fits. Okay. So then we've talked about the position and proof, and then we talked about the concession and the refutation, right? So those pieces that kind of come together can be their own thing or they can be separate. And then we talk about the conclusion, which not the rabbit hole conclusion, but a call to action, a sophisticated one, okay? So we want to make sure that we're bringing these pieces together, okay? So you want to use so someone's just asked a question. Do you want to use the context to support, not the passage to support the context? Use context to support the passage, not the passage to support the context. Right. You want to make sure that what you discuss is aligned with the prompt that you receive, okay? Now, with classical structure, you guys know that this is your essay outline. You're going to start out with your introduction. You're going to have a little bit of background in that. You're going to have your body paragraphs, and you're going to have your conclusion. So the question becomes, how do you want to structure it? And this is how all of these things are too. So even Gandhi did this. Gandhi started out, okay, yes, I know it was the conclusion, but his conclusion almost followed this process too, right? The introduction, where he was kind of talking about, hey, here's what's going on. Here's my background. Here's exactly what I want from you, okay? So that next piece becomes position and proof. This is where you have your claim about that dude's claim, and then you have the evidence that supports what your claim is. In that, you can choose to bring your concession and refutation together in that same thing, or you can bring that concession and refutation in a later part of your essay, okay? So you can choose that. And sometimes with rhetorical analysis, you might not address the concession and refutation at all. It's okay to not do that in rhetorical analysis. It depends on the prompt, okay? The next piece is that conclusion, that kind of that call to action. And with rhetorical analysis, it's not the same as the argumentative, because typically when we think about an argument, that call to action is like, give me liberty or give me death, right? And you're not going to have that same kind of call to action in your conclusion, but you do want to call to act because you want to give them that final call to your claim, to what you are trying to prove, okay? Now, I see a lot of questions about concession and refutation, and I have that built in for tonight. It's going to be great. Okay. So here we go. Hold on to your hats. How are you going to use your knowledge of the classical argumentative structure to help increase your FRQ? How's that going to work for you? What do you think? I see some great answers here. You're all so smart. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Submit, submit, submit. What? Check this one out. I'm going to create a more nuanced argument and hopefully gain sophistication. That absolutely would be a great strategy there, okay? Another thought would be to use this to help me to be more easily able to understand the author's argument, their message, their purpose, and then help me to explain it better. So all of these answers are very, very true. They're very correct. You want to make sure that you're there. I also see comments about not wanting to be so stiff, for example, with that rhetorical précis. And I think that that's a very valid point. And that's why when I talk about it, I'm like, it has these 4 parts: put these parts in there. I know that some people, and like if you guys Googled the concept of what the rhetorical précis is, you probably came up with this format that said, sentence 1 should say this, sentence 2 should say that. So you kind of have that piece there too, okay? So with that said, we roll into Unit 3 skills. Okay. And Unit 3 is where you really start to focus on argument, because it's got to be better than when someone says do this and you're like, well, I don't want to do that. And your mom or your dad is like, because I said so. That's not a great argument. I mean, yeah, you got the credibility there, Mom, but that's not how we argue, okay? So we want to make sure that you can kind of bring those pieces in. Now, the rhetorical précis is beautiful because it gives you that introduction paragraph. It gives you the pieces that are there. So if you build a very long introduction, I don't think I would do that, just because you only have a certain amount of time and you don't want to give too much context. You don't want to give too much background, okay? Then it's going to seem like you went off topic. But if yours is kind of short, the model that we looked at last week was just 3 sentences. So that can help you as well. Okay. All right. Are we ready? Are we ready? Because now we're moving into our new learning for tonight, where we look at this fantastic guy named Stephen Toulmin. Okay. I love that picture there. He looks very Gatsby. But that's actually, I cited my source down here. It's from the New York Times. He's a famous philosopher. He's actually known for his scientific studies. And with that, he's looked at all sorts of things with different arguments. And actually what he did is he created a model for analyzing arguments that was called the Toulmin model. Now, it was viewed as this amazing thing. And so that was something that a lot of people were like, wait a minute, you can totally use this to analyze arguments, but what if you use this to build an argument? And then everybody was like dominoes and light bulbs. And absolutely, here we are tonight. I'm teaching you to use the Toulmin model to help you build your paragraphs. Okay. So absolutely going to help, but a couple little words here we got to get in. Okay. So first is the claim. The claim is, what do you think? It's the assertion that's being made. Okay. So those of you who looked at that Gatsby prompt, just in your head, you don't have to write this down. You don't have to type it. I just want you to think through this. Number 1, what did you think about what Gandhi wanted? What'd you think? And then move it on down. The evidence is, why do you think this? So whatever you think Gandhi thought, why did he think that? What did you see, the evidence that supports what you think? Now, the warrant is the piece that it's honestly generally implied. However, sometimes when you have an implied reason, it's not the right reason. Now, the audience can make their own logical leap there, but you can actually increase the quality of your argument if you tell them how you want them to think, if you bring them to your side, okay? And then, of course, we have the qualifier. Now, these are the limitations surrounding the claim. So I always tell my students, let's use the Toulmin model, because this is the easiest way to make sure you have it. Now, it doesn't have to go in this order. So it's kind of like the rhetorical précis. It has these parts. You're going to build a paragraph, and you're going to have all these parts in your paragraph, and it's going to be great. Okay. So this is the structure I recommend with my students, because it's so easy to use and it's so easy to put it together. Okay. Now, sometimes you're going to have your claim is presented at the top, and then you kind of go down through there. Sometimes you have your evidence, and your evidence draws you down to your claim at the bottom of the paragraph. So you're going to kind of see this. And if you look at the student samples, which I'll give you the link to those tonight, those student samples, actually, you have 2 very high scoring essays. One gives you claim and then presents it. The claim is the topic sentence. And then the other one does the exact opposite. There's no topic sentence. It jumps right in, and it gives you that at the concluding sentence. So you'll be able to see that. Okay. So big picture, you have this big argument. And in your big argument, you're going to use classical structure. You're going to start out with your introduction and your background. You're going to move into your proposition and your proof. And in your proposition and your proof, you're going to use the Toulmin model to build your body paragraphs. Okay? Brilliant. Now, so let's just see if I can, try this with you guys. Are you ready? In a fight between a pirate and a ninja, who's going to win? What do you think? It's like the the Jeopardy song. I don't think I can do that. That might be like some kind of violation of copyright or something. What do you think? Who's going to win here? We're very like-minded in this group. Are you ready? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm not going to show you the results. Okay, are you ready? All right, so the claim is the ninja would clearly win, okay? Now, here is the deal though. When we're looking at building Toulmin, it's not enough for me to just say the ninja would clearly win. I've got to have some sort of background there. I've got to give some more information. Now, I can start with a qualifier, okay? Because if I say the ninja would clearly win, some of you guys might be like, Stephanie Kirk, what are you doing? But if I say the ninja would probably win, you might be like, oh, okay, probably could, right? So you kind of change it a little bit by adding a different qualifier. Now, I can say the ninja would win. That makes it sound exact. It's like a claim of fact. If I say clearly win, I can totally turn off my audience. And I don't necessarily want to do that. But if I say the ninja would probably win, it's like a soft blow. It's like, yeah, probably. Hear me out. And you're like, okay, I'll listen to you, but I don't know about that. Okay. So I've got to move into my evidence. Now, if I'm looking at just this general outline, the qualifier will qualify it for you. Okay. All right, so with my evidence, if I say the ninja would probably win or clearly win, you can choose. It's because the pirates are always drunk and the pirates are very loud. And in your brain, you're like, okay, I'm with you on the whole drunk thing, but what does the loud have to do with the ninja? Okay, so we've got to move on to our next step. It's not enough just to have a claim and evidence. We've got to have that warrant. Okay, so the warrant is the piece that brings in that explanation. Okay, so if I say pirates are always drunk, so they are less coordinated and intentional than a ninja, then you're like, oh, yeah, drunk people are kind of uncoordinated and not very intentional, right? Or the ninja is trained to be stealthy, so they could easily sneak up on a rambunctious pirate. Okay, I got a little bit more. I've given you some background. So where are we at? Give me a thumbs up. You feel a little bit better? Okay, are you ready? Are you ready? I'm going to take this into a paragraph now so that we can see here. Okay. All right. Here we go. I can start out with this. Okay. So I can say in a fight between a ninja and a pirate, the ninja would clearly win because pirates are always drunk and loud. The first reason a ninja is superior to a pirate is that pirates are always drunk. So they are less coordinated and intentional than a ninja. This means that while the pirate is shooting a gun or swinging a sword with double vision, the ninja could sneak attack with a low blow that puts the pirate on his back. Consequently, the pirate would probably drop the weapon and give the ninja, who's trained in direct combat, the upper hand on the situation. I mean, that's a pretty good argument, right? There are several things in here that make it a strong argument, okay? Even if you feel like the pirate's going to win, but you're wrong, okay? I absolutely have gone all analysis on fighting technique here because our whole point is analysis. So if we look at this, we have our thesis statement, your primary claim. My primary claim is this ninja is going to win, okay? Now, beneath that primary claim, I have a second piece that becomes my topic sentence, okay? So my first minor claim is that the pirate's drunk. And the second one was about him being too loud, okay? Or her, whatever my pirate happens to be. So I have evidence with my warrant. I have my analysis of the evidence, and then I have a link to the thesis. I've gone the first reason. This means that. Consequently, I brought in a line of reasoning, okay? So you start out with your claim, your primary claim, and then you move into your body paragraphs. They become your second claim. So that first piece, in a fight between a ninja and a pirate, that's my thesis statement, y'all. That's my thesis statement. Moving down into it, my claim is what I'm trying to prove. My evidence is how I'm going to prove it. And my warrant is the piece that makes those two things make sense. Okay? Are we ready? But wait, there's more. Okay? What if, because I had this discussion with my husband, pirates generally are like in flocks, right? They're like in groups. That's cool. I can counter this for you. Are you ready? So the counter argument is when someone's like, well, what about? And so you address the other possibilities. And there are two primary ways to address the other possibilities. Now, the first thing you can do is concede. You can say, oh, you're right. Pirates generally are in a group. You admit something's true. Give them a little bit. My boy over here, Jay Heinrichs, he says, let them win on points. Okay? But then also refute it. Does the counter have an invalid point? Okay? Prove that it's wrong. Are you ready to see this? I got you. Look at this. Look. The first reason a ninja is superior to a pirate is that pirates are always drunk, so they are less coordinated and intentional than a ninja. This means that while the pirate is shooting a gun or swinging a sword with double vision, the ninja could sneak attack with a low blow that puts the pirate on its back. While pirates are generally with a group and ninjas work alone, a singular sober assassin could easily create a single movement with multiple limbs and a roundhouse kick to ward off multiple drunken pirates with one good eye. Consequently, the pirate or pirates would drop the weapon and give the ninja who's trained in direct combat the upper hand on the situation. There we go. Made it happen. This is it. Notice the way we started with a thesis statement. Ninja's gonna win, okay? And we came up with some reasons for that. And then we went right through those reasons with our evidence. We explained the evidence, why the evidence proves it. I said, it's not just that they're drunk. It's that being drunk makes them less coordinated. And because they're less coordinated and less intentional, they're gonna die, okay? I gave another example, okay? The pirate shooting a gun and swinging a sword with double vision, right? Also, I was having to ask Google, what's the ninja swirly fight thing where they kick and knock people over? There was a lot on this, okay? So all of this builds your quality of your argument. So the question becomes, Ms. Kirk, didn't you put this together? Aren't we supposed to be talking about rhetorical analysis? You are. You are. You're looking at how to build high quality rhetorical analysis body paragraphs, right? Because we want it to be rhetorical analysis. We want it to be about the prompt. So how in the world do we bring these pieces of argument into rhetorical analysis? Coincidentally, that is right here where we're at. So as we get ready to move into a rhetorical analysis, I have a question here. And the question is about the thesis statement. So we're going to look at another thesis statement here in just a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and answer this question because thesis statements are pretty important. So how do you know if your thesis is specific or analyzed enough? How do you know that it's thorough and it's complete? My thing is it needs to be about strategies and not about devices. And the reason is because the strategy is the action that's taken to do that. And then the devices are just the things. So I got you right here. Are you ready? Okay. So what we're going to do is, I just pushed something weird. You guys are great answering the questions over here on the side. Okay. Are you ready? Now, you guys were mic drop on my paragraph, right? But here we go. By belittling the drunken nature of pirates and highlighting the impressive skill sets of ninjas, Kirk has wisely asserted that given the unlikely battle should arise, a ninja will effectively take out a pirate. Now, that's a great, I realize I wrote it, but that's a great example of a thesis statement because I followed the example on College Board, okay? The first strategy is belittling the drunken nature of pirates. The second strategy is highlighting the impressive skill set of the ninja. Did you see those two things in that passage, in that paragraph? Absolutely did, okay? So the next thing would be, how do we prove that these strategies exist, okay? So it says Kirk has belittled the drunken nature. Well, there was some calculated diction there. I spoke very positively when I spoke about the ninja, and I intentionally spoke negatively and about that pirate. Did you guys pick up on those words? So the strategy that I did is I belittled the drunken nature of the pirate. They had double vision. They were swinging a sword or shooting a gun with double vision, okay? And then you push that down and move on to that next piece. So we're looking at highlighting the impressive skills. So what was that? Now, you can see all these different devices. Another one would be imagery. You can talk about that. You can talk about the concession, the author's use of concession. So you kind of see all of those little things, okay? So the point would be my strategy is what I did. The device is the tool I used to do that thing. How did I belittle them? I used calculated diction, okay? I intentionally used my diction to make your mind think negative things about drunken pirates and to think really highly sober assassin, skillful ninja things, okay? I created this imagery in your brain. You probably chuckled just a little bit about this concept of some drunk person sword fighting, right? And then, of course, I did concede the pirates in a group. Yeah, pirates are probably in a group, but they're going to be all drunk and loud, okay? So that is rhetorical analysis. Now, last week, we looked at the Barry prompt. Do you remember that? Okay, so I wanted to show you all an example sentence, well, more than one sentence, but I wanted to kind of show you guys an example that uses the Toulmin model in the paragraph, okay? So, for example, we start with our claim, and now this is actually the second body paragraph that someone wrote about, but we talked a lot about like the certainty versus uncertainty, so I didn't want to pick a first body paragraph. So, this person's thesis is looking at the idea of scientists as a hero. Okay, so Barry asserts that scientists are heroes that should be admired, even when the challenges strike. So the claim here is Barry then goes on to compare scientists to pioneers in the wilderness. He states that, and then look at the way the evidence is brought in here. Now, I'm going to highlight something that's done. And the use of like jungle is like a little piece that's in quotation marks. They travel through the jungle with no idea what they are going to encounter. Notice the use of paraphrase. This can show a sophisticated understanding because of the fact that you haven't pulled in an entire sentence from the prompt, brought in just a small piece. Barry also mentions that one step can cause a scientist to go through the looking glass into a world that seems entirely different. That's your text evidence. And then we have down here, we have our commentary and our analysis. By, note the strategy, alluding to Alice in Wonderland, Barry makes it clear that scientists have to deal with the fact that one turn can throw them into the wide scope of the unknown. Okay? Goes all the way through the next piece of evidence. They have to come to terms with the idea that they will never clearly know where their research might take them. That's another piece of evidence. Now, this time it's paraphrased. And then we have more commentary and analysis. The choice of discreetly mentioning such a well-known film makes the audience easily imagine the dangers of being thrown in an entirely different world. And then notice this link back to that abstract task, since it is skillfully compared to the difficulties a heroine had to face in a well-known film. It didn't come out and say, since it proves that scientists are heroes. It didn't use the exact same words, but it came with a skillful way of reiterating that idea. How cool is that? A Toulmin paragraph, and it does exactly what you guys are looking for. Your claim is your topic sentence, right? You've got evidence from the text. Then you move into commentary and analysis, another piece of evidence, commentary and analysis, and your link. All of this is a Toulmin paragraph, okay? Now, I do also want to highlight this. You see those parts that are underlined? Because on our learning intention, I said, advanced, I want you to start thinking about your line of reasoning. Notice the line of reasoning that is brought in here. Barry then goes on to do this. He states this. He also mentions this. Evidence in paraphrase. By alluding to this, Barry makes it clear. The choice of makes the audience. So notice that line of reasoning, the way it's kind of pulled through that, okay? What do you think of that? I think it's cool. I love it. I did have a question about this. It said, what is the effect of the discrete analogy instead of explicitly comparing it to Alice in Wonderland? I think it's an interesting way to kind of think about what that looks like as well. Okay. Are you ready to move forward? Yeah, you know you are. All right. So I ran an update on the AP Lang Everything You Need to Know About Passing This Test, and I outlined the steps that we've been taking because you guys have asked about the steps and you've asked about the timeline, and I want to make sure that I'm doing that for you. So step 1, analyze the prompt, 3 minutes. Step 2, read and annotate it by chunks for about 8-ish minutes, okay? I'm an ish kind of person, so let's make the ishes work for you. Next, you're going to create an outline, 3 minutes. Sometimes you don't need 3 minutes because once you get really good at it, your step number 2 kind of takes your step number 3, but don't worry, I'll show you an example. Step number 4, you're going to write your introduction and your thesis statement, 5-ish minutes. And then you're going to create the body using Toulmin structure. Now, this is 10-ish minutes, okay? It should, anywhere that you have an ish, you can use less. Well, every time you can use less than all of my minute outlines. But this is kind of what I see when I go through and I look at it. This is when I'm in my class, I give my students the prompt. I say 3 minutes to analyze the prompt, go. And I literally set a timer, okay? So when you're looking at the body, some people are going to put in 2 paragraphs. Some people, in normal years, when you do 3 essays, you might just have 1 body paragraph. Don't do 1 body paragraph. You only have 45 minutes. You only have 1 piece of this test. Show off, y'all. This is an easy opportunity for you to do it, okay? Show what you know. So when you are looking at this and you're kind of looking at it from the Gandhi's letter perspective, I have a spoiler alert, okay? From this point forward, our steps are going to be applied to the 2019 Gandhi, okay? Now, if you have read it, you've done the prompt, and when I'm thinking of prompt, I'm thinking of what they tell you to do and then the text that goes with it because they come together, okay? So when you go through and you're looking at the passage and you're analyzing the passage or the text, you're going to have a little more time there. So at this point, we're going to talk about 2019. So some of you guys have submitted your 2019. So for some feedback, I will definitely get that to you. And then some of you guys, if you want to continue, as long as I have it by tomorrow night, I'll get you some feedback on that pretty soon. And so let's go. All right. I have a couple of questions. We're definitely going to address those. One's about the body paragraphs and one's about the conclusion, and we'll definitely get there. Okay. All right. So dun, da, da. Here we are. Step 1 is to analyze the prompt. So you have the background, you have the advice, and you have the task. The task that you're looking at here is twofold. The first one is concrete, and the second one is abstract. So when you looked at this, you have 2 very specific things. You'll note that I looked at aspects and I did revise my color coding. I used the colors that are used on the College Board videos that they've been putting out lately. So that will hopefully not confuse anybody. And then you can kind of see the analysis of it and the concrete task. If you look at the last sentence, then in a well-written essay, analyze the rhetorical choices Gandhi makes to present his case to Lord Irwin. So what is your concrete task? That's the thing that you can point out and you can be like, they told me to do this. Okay, so my concrete task, rhetorical choices. I'm going to look at the rhetorical choices that he's used. Abstract, to present his case to Lord Irwin. Now, we call that abstract because I got to think about it a little bit more, and I got to be like, okay, what is the case he's making? What is the case he's making? Now, from here, you guys will remember I asked you guys to think about the parts of aspect. So how can we look at this and see audience? How do we see the speaker? How do we see purpose, exigence, context? And then T, we call it topic and tone. I think of it as the message, okay? So I've got the background. The background is going to give me my context. It's going to give me my speaker. You can see where the B is, 1930, Gandhi led a nonviolent march in India, protesting, I have to look on this one, sorry, y'all, guys. Protesting Britain's colonial monopoly and taxation on the essential resource, salt. The Salt March, as it came to be known, was a triggering moment for the larger civil disobedience movement that eventually won India independence from Britain in 1947. So in my head, I'm like, okay, 1930, it didn't quite work, but eventually, 1947, something changed, okay? So that's going to give me that background. That's that B. A is the advice that they give me. They told me to read the passage carefully. Nowadays, they haven't been giving us a lot of advice. They used to give us a lot more. But I know it needs to be well written, and I know I'm going to look at the rhetorical choices, okay? So then the question becomes, what is his purpose? Oftentimes, what you'll find is they give you a hint of the purpose. And the hint that they give us here is present his case to Lord Irwin. So I have to figure out, what is his purpose? What does Gandhi want them to do? Okay? I want to highlight the use of aspects as a tool here because I haven't even read the prompt and I know a lot about it at this point, okay? I know that it's about the Salt March. Even if I had no concept of like what the Salt March was, then I can look at this and I can tell you, okay, it's about India. They don't like the way that Britain's trying to control the salt. They obviously want some freedom. I can go through and see all of those pieces, okay? I can see who it's written to. I can see a little bit more about Irwin, the representative of the British Crown in India. I can see all of these pieces. Also, it tells me it's the conclusion of the letter, so you can kind of see that there. Okay? All right. So aspects. Always look at your aspects. Audience, speaker, purpose, exigence. That's your reason for writing it right now. Context, and then your task. Okay? So just real quick, because a lot of my students have asked about like exigence versus context. So the context is kind of this background piece where it's like the nonviolent march and all of that. And the exigence is kind of where it says shortly before the Salt March, he's hoping to avoid it. So his exigence is he's communicating about what's going to happen in order to try to get them to change their ways. I hope I didn't just tell you too much. Might have. Okay. So step number 2, you're going to read and annotate the chunks, and you're going to take about 8-ish minutes. Now, this is a pretty long passage. I obviously don't know how long that's going to be on your actual exam, but this will kind of help you out kind of as you look at what that process is going to be. So where, Miss Kirk, where am I going to annotate this? What is it going to look like? Okay. Bear with me here. This is a well-loved document, is it not? It totally is a well-loved document. So what you can see in this is you've got your prompt in there, you have the text in there, and now what you can't see without like really looking at it, but don't worry, I gotta zoom in on it in just a second, okay? What you can see is, first of all, there's blue ink and there's black ink. Now, this is important because the blue ink and the black ink would be the way that you annotate your text when you think about the fact that you are only allowed to have blue ink, black ink, and pencil, okay? And so you can use those two things to kind of help you out. Obviously, I did use a highlighter when I was going through and looking at it, but you would kind of see what that looks like. So you have to identify the chunks. Now, your chunks might be different from someone else's chunk, but the question is, where in the world do I divide the chunks? How do I know what they are? And when you're reading, the more you read, you'll pick up on things that shift, things that change. And when you see the shift or you see the change, then that's going to be where you kind of draw the line and you say, okay, this is a chunk. Now, let's say you have 20 chunks, okay, or 6 chunks. Then you can lump them together by purpose to figure it out because you don't want to write 6 paragraphs. And if there's a ton, you can actually break it down to in the beginning of his writing, in the middle, and in the end. Okay, that's a big help. All right, so you guys are going to be annotating this so that you can prepare. And when you do, we have actually been told that you're going to be able to annotate it on your computer. But I know that there are some people who are planning to print it out right then and get to work on it. So you can choose to print it out if you want, or you can annotate it on the computer. We don't know what that platform looks like, but I anticipate the email that we're supposed to get on the 28th, I think is going to answer some of those questions. So with this, so I guess quick question was, how many body paragraphs do you recommend? 2 or 3? I say 3 because it shows a deeper understanding, gives you the opportunity to hit the sophistication. It lets you have more opportunity to really highlight the fact that you understand your rhetorical situation, but you also understand the author's rhetorical situation. So I personally think go with 3. In a normal year, you can, well, I guess anytime you can go with 2, but I think that this year in particular, you only have one essay. Why not go for 3? Why not go for 3? So then we're going to look at, I got a couple other questions here that we're going to kind of address here in just a little bit. So I kind of get to them when they get here. Okay. All right. So resource alert, the Fiveable Aspects Guide Sheet. Now we went through this and looked at it at the beginning and kind of said, what in the world does this look like? So here I've gone through. Now you'll note the black ink and the blue ink again. The black ink is when I did it with just the prompt. The blue ink is after I read the passage and kind of brought it in, okay? And I will actually send this document out to you all so you'll be able to take your document, your analysis, and then you can compare it to this, okay? So the second thing with the aspects was the strategy analysis. And the goal was for each chunk for you to analyze the strategies that happen in those chunks. Well, Ms. Kirk, I might need a little bit more information. That's okay, friends. I'm with you. But before I do that, we're going to bump into step 3 because some of you guys are asking about what those letters and numbers were on that annotated guide. And so I want to help you out. I want you to see what that is. So I know that my quick outline needs to be thesis, strategy, device, message, and purpose. Okay, that's kind of what I want to go to and what I'm looking at. And so the question that we had earlier was, should we mention the rhetorical strategies in the thesis, or should we only explain the what and the how? If you look at the thesis statement rubric, it actually specifies that, that it wants it to tell you what the strategies are. So I would say, yes, look at what the strategies are. And if you're going to do a device-driven thesis statement, say what the devices are that you're going to look at. Okay, so you want to make sure that that happens. So then, well, what do? How do we do that? Well, you should theoretically have, according to MLA, a minimum of 2. So if you have an A, you have a B. If you have a 1, you have a 2. So as a minimum, you would need 2 strategies. And as a minimum, you need 2 examples or 2 devices for each strategy. Okay. So technically, 2 paragraphs with 2 pieces of evidence in each paragraph is sufficient. But you can definitely boost yourself a little bit by asking that or by creating that third one up there. Okay? All right. So here we go. Yes. Zoomed in on it for you a little bit because I want you to kind of see what this looks like. So this is that first chunk that you can see that's annotated. The first 2 paragraphs are identified as 1, and then you've got 2 number 2s. So what happened here is there seemed to be a chunk. There was a divide in paragraph 2 to 3 because when you look at the text, that was I have deliberately used the word conversion, and then it jumps down and it says, I have served them until 1919 blindly. And so there's a shift that occurs. It changes from saying, hey, here's what I want to look, I did this before, and this is what we're moving on to. But it kind of, when you're trying to figure out how do I build a paragraph about my strategies that happen there, there's another shift just a little bit below that, where it specifically says the plan through civil disobedience will be to combat such evils. Now, someone asked about chunks and how can you tell? Look how long this paragraph is. The plan through civil disobedience. You see how long that is? A big change in the sentence structures that creates a big change in the paragraph structure. That's pretty indicative of a shift. So you can kind of look at that. Okay. Now, I mentioned that it's time to create our outline, but there are a few things here that you can see. First of all, on the left-hand side, you can see where it says personal experience acknowledges the risk. That's the strategy that's going to be addressed here. In this chunk, the strategy is to look at the personal experience and to look at acknowledging the risk. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in that paragraph? Notice the use of the 1A, where it talks about the mad risk, the gravest character, the conversion, no less to convert. He says all of these things, you've got 1A, your first piece of evidence, is going to be the strategy is still acknowledging the risk. But the tool he uses, the device he uses to acknowledge the risk is a very intentional vocabulary. And he even explains the vocabulary that he gives. He says conversion. And I chose conversion for this reason. Okay. Now, the next piece down a little bit, you can see the 1B, where it looks at if the people will join me, the suffering they will undergo. It retraces its steps. It will melt the stoniest of hearts. So that's the next thing that is done to say, hey, I'm acknowledging the risk. This is the personal experience, but it's going to be worth these risks because it's going to melt your stony hearts. Okay? So the strategy, the big idea for body paragraph here is going to be acknowledging the risk, the personal experience. Okay? The devices that are going to be used is the intentionality of the word choice, and it's going to be looking at the acknowledgement of the risk through the sense of that personal experience and melting the stony hearts. Okay. Now, if I want to, can I bring in a third piece? Absolutely, I can bring in that third piece. I can bring in that next piece where he's talking about serving them blindly and talk about that his object was still to serve them even when he noticed that there was no cooperation. So if I wanted to increase the quality of that body paragraph, I can use 3 pieces of evidence instead of 2. All right. Now, what does this look like? How do I make this happen? Because using the aspects worksheet is doing a lot when I don't have a lot of time, right? Are you with me? That's a lot. Well, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So what do you see? You can see the outline from the document that has been annotated from the text itself. That outline actually pushes you through that strategy analysis. You're looking at what is done, how is it used, and why is it used? What is the impact? Okay. So if you have these worksheets and you print them out, again, I shared them in our chat, but I'll definitely put them out to you again and send them in your email so that you have access to it, and just kind of look at what that looks like. And actually the aspects worksheet, I can probably do a forced copy template on that one too, just so that you have it. Because that would be helpful, I think, maybe. All right. So, man, that's doing a lot. But the better we get at it, the better you can do, okay? So each body paragraph, at least 1 strategy and 2 devices, minimum of 2 devices that make that strategy happen, okay? Now, could we do this if our passage was fiction? Yes. There have been a couple of instances where College Board has actually put out an example of fiction, and you have to do a rhetorical analysis of that piece of fiction. So that's totally doable. Okay, so are you ready? Because now you're at step 4, your introduction and your thesis statement, which is going to take you about 5-ish minutes. Okay, now you'll note that this is a screenshot from the Fiveable aspects guide sheet. Okay, so it tells you, hey, these are the parts of the rhetorical précis. If you Googled it, or if your teacher has you using the sentences, then by all means, you're welcome to do that as well. But that becomes kind of formulaic. So I prefer to say, hey, these are the things you need to have in it. So put them in it where they feel natural to put them in it. But I also color-coded this example too, so that you could see what it looks like. Nonviolence has often been a technique used by social and political figures to peacefully display opposition to a certain practice. Notice that that's your topic. That's your message. That's what we're talking about. And then it talks about Thoreau. It moves on down to Martin Luther King Jr. And then it says organizing peaceful protests to further the rights. So we've addressed our topic again of African Americans. In 1930, the Salt March. Okay, so you can kind of see that and pull that in. And that's your exigence. And then we go through, we talk about Gandhi used the principles. Look at this. This is my context here. The principles of civil disobedience and nonviolence to protest the unjust control of India by Britain by arranging a salt march to display the unfair British monopoly on salt. Then it goes into my strategies, okay? This is where my thesis statement is. By describing the British control of Indian commerce as greedy and misguided, by clearly asserting the peaceful nature of the protest, and by offering to negotiate, Gandhi makes the case that his nonviolent protests stand up for the good of mankind against the tyranny of the British. You've got 3 things. How many body paragraphs are they going to have? They're going to have 3, right? Yeah, because whatever you say in your thesis statement is what you're going to have, right? So don't put 3 up here and then only get 2 paragraphs done. If you do that in the last 2 minutes, go back and cross out the one you didn't have time to talk about. Okay, you know what I'm saying? All right. Notice that last piece in blue down there. It's making the case that. It actually uses the word from the prompt, makes the case that. Now, you don't have to use the word from the prompt. You could have said to argue that, or to communicate the concept of. So you don't have to use the exact word from the prompt. This is a very strong thesis statement. This is actually, it does get the thesis point. And actually, this is the student sample from College Board using sample SS. Okay? So are you ready for my next thing? Kind of our last thing to get us ready for next time. Are you ready? Are you ready? Sophistication. Because, you know, I told you we're going to sophisticate this thing from the start. So here we are. All right. This is complex understanding of the rhetorical situation. Did you notice the way that in that introduction paragraph, the message or that topic was brought back into it a few times? Did you catch that? It's a big deal, okay? That whole thing kind of starts. So the next thing that I have for you is the levels of reasoning guide sheet. So you can use this to help you figure it out. It does have the option for you to do the device-driven thesis statement or the strategy-driven thesis statement. Now remember, 70 Kirk says strategies, but if you need to do the devices, that works too, okay? So that is an option for you. So then you're ready, friends. Body by Toulmin. You got it? Do you get it? I'm an English teacher. I get to make puns all the time. So I want to highlight a couple of things here. With your rubric, your evidence needs to be specific to support all claims in a line of reasoning. It says that same thing for the 3 and the 4, okay? With commentary, the difference between a 3 and the 4 is that your commentary is some explained for a 3 and consistently explained for a 4. So if I just have 2 body paragraphs with a couple pieces of evidence and I don't really explain it, am I going to hit a 3? Probably not, because I got to explain some of it at least to get that 3, okay? Now that last piece I want to highlight in the 2, 3, and 4 area of the rubric, some relates to the student's argument. So in order to get a 2, you got to talk about your argument, okay? But to hit that 3 and that 4, you've got to talk about Gandhi's argument. You've got to say, this is what Gandhi did. This is what Gandhi was trying to do. And this is how it worked for Gandhi. Okay? So you see how that can help you out? Do you think you're ready to do this next task? So if you did not submit and you want to submit, that's cool. You can submit. I'll give you some feedback on it. If you did submit, I think I had like 4 or 5 right before that I didn't quite get back to you. So I want you to kind of make sure that you get that in there. So your primary claim is Gandhi makes the case that blah, blah, blah. That becomes your claim about his claim. All right. Each body paragraph, you need to address the message and you need to address the purpose. So I want you to be able to go through and look at that. And so I have provided you with a resource. Are you ready? Your resource is I've taken that student sample, SS, and used the line of reasoning to do a reverse outline. So I'm going to give you that document so you'll have it. So you'll be able to see how all those pieces come together. Isn't that brilliant? I think reverse outlining can be a huge, huge help. And so I just want to make sure that we're really looking at it and we're really, truly understanding kind of where we are. So we've done a lot tonight, haven't we? We've done so much. We have looked at our learning intention of using the argumentative structure to do the outline as a whole. We looked at Toulmin so that we could build body paragraphs with the Toulmin model. And we looked at how can we address all parts of the prompt with a line of reasoning. So we're going to nail this thing, aren't we? We're absolutely going to address it. We're going to nail this thing and it's going to be so great. So as we get ready to kind of sign out, I'm going to open it up. I got a couple of questions I want to answer. I have one here on the author's message and the purpose. The message is what they're talking about, what they're trying to say, what they want from you. And the purpose is the reason behind it. And in my brain, I always think, okay, what's he saying? Now, what does he want done with it? Okay. What's he saying? Now, what does he want done with it? Okay. A couple questions I got in here. So let's see. We have... How many bodies should we have? So if you think about your body paragraphs, how many body paragraphs should you have? You want to look and make sure that you have at least 2. I do recommend doing 3 and at least 2 pieces of evidence in each body paragraph. And then you can kind of move on into 3 if you feel a little bit better about that. Okay. The next question, when will we have a new RA to write? I missed the deadline this week. You didn't miss the deadline, darling. We're going to do this prompt again next week because I got a little bit of new learning. We're going to look at the modes of development. Remember, we're in Unit 3. So we're going to look at the student samples so you can go through and submit your Gandhi response, and I will definitely get you some feedback on that. Now, after the 2019, we're going to the 2018. So some of you guys, because Ms. Kirk screwed up, some of you guys actually already submitted the 2018, so you get bonus there, okay? So then when should you submit them? Usually, if you guys have it submitted, like, since we're going to do this same prompt again next week, as long as it's done by, say, next Wednesday, then I can give you some feedback before we come in on Thursday. Because, again, we're going to look at modes of development. We're going to look at student samples. But I want you to be able to get out of this what you want. So feel free to kind of do that in there, kind of rolling deadlines. I don't know. It's like it's all there. So we kind of look at it. Another question was the SAT allows you to make up evidence or reports for context because they're looking at how you write. So can you say the New York Times said, even if it's not true? Well, I mean, I don't think they're going to like stop and go look it up for your introduction. I think you could, I'm hesitant to tell you to lie. I don't want to tell you to lie. I have had students tell me they've done that before though. So I hope that answers. But the New York Times probably did say it because they say a lot of things. So if you have already written it and do you want to rewrite it or submit it? If you've already submitted it, I've already pulled it through, so I'll be able to give you some feedback from there. And then someone asked, how do I get back? Do I email it back to you or do I edit the Google Doc? If you put it on the Google Classroom, I actually have a neat little add-on that will put the rubric there, so you'll get stuff right on that document there. Okay, next question. Is it better to have 3 body paragraphs and no conclusion or 2 body paragraphs and a conclusion if we're running out of time? That is a great question. In the past, I would have told you it would have been fine to not worry about that. But now, given the rubric, I would say you need at least a concluding statement. Okay, at least a concluding statement there. Next question is, if I'm trying to plan myself out, if I have it written by next Thursday, that'd probably work. It also, if you don't want me to give you feedback and you want to just write it and then you go back and apply these principles to your writing, you can definitely do that. That totally works. So next question was, so how many strategies per paragraph? I would do 1 strategy per paragraph, but each strategy needs to have multiple tools to make the strategy happen. Okay. So, my strategy with teaching you guys the Toulmin model tonight was to use the pirate versus a ninja thing. So that was my strategy. But what was the tool that I did? Well, the tool that I brought in to give you that was brought into those pieces. So you can kind of see what that looks like. So 1 strategy per paragraph that you wrote, but that might be multiple of Gandhi's paragraphs. Okay. So for example, I mentioned that first strategy, acknowledging the risk. That was 1 paragraph from me, but that was from 3 of his paragraphs. But in that strategy, there were 3 devices or 3 tools that we talked about there. Okay. We can put the class code. I did have a class code for Google to kind of help you all out for that. So I'll put that over in the chat just because it's easier to put it in the chat. And then last question was, how do you make a concluding sentence? So if you're going to make a concluding sentence, I would go back to your primary idea and I would make a statement about the effectiveness. So I would literally say something like, in short, Gandhi is effective at blank because he blank, blank, blank. If you have extra time, you can address a little bit more about it. And you can say something like, because Gandhi knew the audience he was addressing, he was able to create a circumstance that would work to help him to reveal whatever, whatever. So, all right. Lots of questions. I love this. Okay. I do have a board here for you for your final thoughts. Anything that you want to say to me, think of for me, questions you have, anything I need to consider for building next week, however you want to do that. The question was, do they need to be the same? Do the tools need to be the same for both strategies, or can you use different ones? Absolutely. Use different you can use different strategies and different tools. Okay. Now, if you see, for example, the first strategy that we discussed in that one was acknowledging the risk, right? But the next thing that we saw was, so when it looked at acknowledging the risk, what you actually see is down towards the bottom when in the next piece of that text, he says, you know what, you could just come and arrest me. That's cool. But there's probably like 10,000 others that are going to do that instead. So you can definitely bring in that back in the beginning, he did this too. And that can show depth of understanding. So you can say he acknowledged the risk. And then in the last piece, you can say he is negotiating, offering negotiation. And in offering the negotiation, he is still showing respect and saying, I won't publish this if you just tell me that something will change. And he is acknowledging the risk that he could be arrested, which reverberates what was stated in the first part of his essay. Okay, so you can definitely address that. Okay, so the question was, is there a Google Drive folder? I will put all of the resources on Fiveable so you have access to them, but I'll put that other code over there for you here in just 1 second. Okay, random question. Hey, there's no such thing as a random question if it helps you out. Should the counter argument be the beginning of the last paragraph? It doesn't have to be, but you can do that. You can actually pull it in so that it is looking at it from the lens of like a concession type thing. Like, for example, the wild pirates are often in groups. Like, you can hide that in there and bring it together so you can see those pieces in there still. So you kind of have that as an option. And then it doesn't have to be the last paragraph. You can put it in the last paragraph if you want to, but you don't have to. So put this over here in the little chat for you. All right, so should we divide the body paragraphs chronologically according to the original text, or should we organize it according to strategies and devices? You may actually choose how to do that. I have found that most of the time, every chunk has its own strategy, and that just sort of works out that way. And so I would suggest that you go through the order that you see it in the passage. And the reason is very simple, because your job here is to communicate, I read this, I understood it, I've analyzed it, and I have critically drawn my own conclusions about what I read. And if you go through it in chronological order, you're showing that you read all parts of it, and you're able to see the way paragraph 6 functions in the point of a whole process. Like, how does paragraph 6 link to the purpose overall, but how does paragraph 6 connect to paragraph 5 and paragraph 9? And so when you bring those pieces together, you're showing a greater depth of understanding. So I think looking at it chronologically is a big helper. But if you're just going to talk about strategies and you're going to say, the use of comparison, then you might talk about comparison at the beginning and comparison at the end, and that's all you've talked about. But that doesn't show that you read anything in the middle, and that's where the biggest part of the beauty in this wording is. All right. Next question. Can you say one might argue for your counter argument? You could totally do that as like an introductory to bring it in. That would work for you. Okay. Tons and tons and tons of questions for tonight. Okay, so we're ready to move on. I'm going to leave this open here. So as you kind of go through it and you look at your resources, now let me just kind of make sure that I've given these to you. You've got the Nearpod, of course, but I want to make sure that you've got the aspects just so that you have it just here for tonight. So I'm going to put it over here in the chat for you. You've got your links. You've got your aspects. You've got the line of reasoning. You've got the Gandhi prompt. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the video. And then you guys who are here tonight, I'm going to send you the link that has the student sample SS on the line of reasoning chart. So you'll have access to that. And then I'm going to add an editable copy of the Fiveable aspects in case you want to do that online too. So, hey, my beautiful people, I love you. Bless you, my children. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight. I look forward to seeing you again next Thursday. We're going to look at modes of development. So we're going to finish out Unit 3, jump start into Unit 4, and then see some student samples on this one. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any time, and I will see you guys soon. Have a great night, you guys. Bye-bye.